Tonight we're going to have a special feature shiur for the 9 days for the forthcoming Tisha about Churban and Nechama. I'd like to start with a Gemara at the end of Maseches Makos, a very famous Gemara, and focus on it. The Gemara tells us two separate stories about Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Akiva. They were all walking. First story is about Malchus Roimi, and I would like to focus tonight about the second story. Says the Gemara as follows: Shuv Pam Achas Hoyu Oilim LiYerushalayim. These Tanoim were Oilim LiYerushalayim. Kevon Shehigiu Lehar Tzofim Koru Bigdeim. When they came to Har Tzofim, and we'll speak about the second half of this year today, about Har Tzofim, Koru Bigdeim. They tore their clothes. The halach is Aroye Ore Yerushalayim Bechurbanon is Chayev Kriya. So these four Tanoim, when they're coming across Har Bayis to Mount Scopus, to Har Tzofim, Koru Bigdeim. Kiven Shehigiu LeHar Bayis, when they came close by to the space of Har Bayis, they saw a fox, Shuol Yoitze Mibeis Kodesh HaKadoshim, walking out from the place of Kodesh HaKadoshim. Hischilu hem boichim veRabbi Akiva mesachik. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Akiva started crying, burst out crying, and Rabbi Akiva, in exchange, mesachik, he laughed. Omru loi, Akiva mipnei ma ato mesachik. Akiva, mizetoch, there's a churban. We're looking, we see a fox coming out of this Kodesh HaKadoshim. This is a place to laugh. Omar loem mipnei ma atem boichim. Why are you crying? You're asking me why I'm laughing? Let me ask you why you're crying. Omru loi, mokoim shekosu boi, vehazor hakorev yumos. Kodesh HaKadoshim, it says in Beis HaMikdash, the only time of the year is once a year on Yom Kippurim, in the holiest day of the year. Kohen Gadol geht rein, machen avodas Yom Kippurim. It says vehazor hakorev yumos ve'achshov niskayim boi. Pasuk we're going to read in Eicho, al artzion sheshomeim shuolim yilchu boi v'lei nivke. We're looking, we're seeing the churban mamish at reality. We see a fox, a emerson, not a moshel. We see a fox walking out of Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim. Lei nivke. Omar Elohem lekach ani mesachik. For the very same reason that you are crying, I am laughing. Diksiv, steht a posuk in Yeshaya, in Perek Ches, ve'oido li eidim ne'emonim es Uriyo hakoyen ve'Zechariyo ben Yeverechio. So I'll give you just a little bit of a background information. Uriyo, the Uriyo that the posuk in Yeshaya is talking about, the Uriyo HaKoyen. Uriyo HaKoyen was Uriyo ben Shmaya. It was a Novi who happened to live in Kiryas Yeorim, that he was menabe nevuos lero on the future of Klal Yisrael in the time of Beis Hamikdash Harishon and on the future of Beis Hamikdash. When Yehoyakim was the king at the time, tried to chop him, Uriyo ran to Mitzrayim, and Yehoyakim sent the whole mishlachas of messengers headed by El Nosson ben Achboyer. They chopped him, they brought him to Yehoyakim, and the king killed him by Yishasef. He took him with his cherev, and he threw him out. He wasn't buried with Kivrei HaNeviim, but he was buried in the regular Beis HaKvoros. Okay? This Novi Yirmiyah, this Novi Uriyo ben Shmaya is mentioned later when they chopping Yirmiyahu in the later stage, also in the later part of a couple of years later, and he was misnab nevul on the Osad of Yerushalayim, and when Yirmiyahu was chopped, they made him a mishpat, and in the mishpat, the litigator said, "What should we do with him?" Said, "Let's see, here is another guy that lived not long ago. His name was Uriyo ben Shmayo, and we killed him, so Yirmiyahu should also be killed." So he's mentioned again later on in Sefer Yirmiyahu. In Sefer Yeshayahu, It's talking about Uriah HaKohen. It doesn't say that he was a Kohen, not in Sefer Yirmiyahu Friyat, it doesn't say. But it says, Va'idoli, Yeshayahu is saying, Eidim Ne'emonim is Uriah HaKohen, which is this Uriah, V'zechayahu ben Yevechayahu. Who's Zechayahu? Zechayahu was from the Nevi'im Achronim. Chaga Zechariah Malachi was Nevi'im Achronim that went to Golus Bavel, and they were Menaber already, and the Nevuah, the Beis HaMikdash, they were Befin Shavit Tzion, from the people who came back with Ezra and Nechama, who rebuilt the second temple after being 70 years in Golus. So Yeshayahu Zokta Pasuk Ve'oidali, I'm taking two Eidim Ne'emonim, Falez Lacha Eidim, Es Uriah HaKohen ve'Zechayahu ben Yevechayahu. Fragt Rabbi Akiva, V'chimayin Uriah etzel Zechariah, V'aloi Uriah b'mikdash rishon. Uriah was b'mikdash rishon. Zechariah came later on. He was from the Nevi'im that started building Beis HaMikdash Hasheni. You're taking two Eidim, it's Eidus Miuchedes. You can't take a few hundred years apart an Eid of Uriah and an Eid of Zechariah who lived in the second Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara says, how do they know where to build the Mino Yadeh, where to put the Mizbeach? In the second Gemara says, Shlosh Nevi'im Olam min Hagoy L'Chai Zechariah Malachi, they were made Amokam HaMizbeach. So we're talking this amount is a gap in time between the middle of Beis HaMikdash HaRishon, or the Tkufa of Uriah ben Shmayahu HaKohen, and the Tkufa of the Novi Zechariah, who lives in Beis HaMikdash, the beginning of the Beis HaMikdash Hasheni. Elo zokt Rabbi Akiva tolo hakosuv nevuoso shel Zechariah ben nevuoso shel Uriah. The reason why Yeshayahu is putting them both together, although they lived in two different Tkufas. Be'Uriah ksiv lochem biglalchem tzion sodat echoresh v'Yerushalayim tiyeh v'Har Habayis lebo Mesyar. The nevuas hazam, the anger nevuah of Uriah was tzion sodat echoresh, telling you Beis HaMikdash is going to be destructed, and Yerushalayim im tiyeh, it's going to be all rubble. V'Har Habayis lebo Mesyar, it's all going to become one big wilderness. Ve'b'Zechariah ksiv, the pasuk in Zechariah, od yeshu zekenim v'zekenos b'rechovis Yerushalayim v'ish al mishanto. It's not only a nigan, but it's a nevuah of Zechariah that will be a real mamish. We built the second Beis HaMikdash in Nechama. Here we are, we're building Beis HaMikdash again. But Yeshayahu, we're putting them together. Zokt Rabbi Akiva, ad shelo niskayim nevuah shel Uriah, till the nevuah of Uriah is not niskayim. Hoisi misiore, I had a pachad. Shemelot iskayim nevuah shel Zechariah. Maybe the nevuah of Zechariah, the second one, since Yeshayahu is putting them both together, and he says, Aida Eidim Ne'emonim, one of Uriah was Nisnabe on the Churban, one of Zechariah was Nisnabe on the Yeshua of after the Churban. So Kol Zman, the first nevuah, was not Niskayim. I was perhaps afraid that the nevuah of Zechariah about the rebuild, about the Tkuma, about the rejuvenating and rebuilding and resuscitating and having Nochamol, a second Beis HaMikdash, maybe it won't be Niskayim. We're seeing this facts coming out of Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim. So this is the fulfillment of the kiyum of the nevuah of Uriah, beyodua shenevuoso shel Zechariah miskayemes. Where you see the Churban, where you burst out crying, I am laughing. Where you see Churban, I see Nechama. So this is a famous Gemara, and the Gemara is L'maaseh Tzorich, and the Marsho, the Maral, everybody asks the kasha. Nevuah is nevuah. Mi lo nuker Rabbi Akiva, sheru'u yoter shetinasel yodo, understand the importance and the validity of a nevuah. A nevuah has to be miskayim irrespective of whatever is going to take place. So why in the world Rabbi Akiva doesn't believe in the nevuah of Zechariah? He needs to come on to see the nevuah of Uriah, which is nevuah l'ra about the Churban, in order to believe that there will be some time Kadosh Baruch Hu is merachem Hashem alamay Nechama and Tkuma and rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. That's number one. Number two, I mean, the Zelben Gemara, if we read the Gemara straight, the Gemara says Kimish Yigil Lahar Habayis, right? Before Yigil Lahar Habayis, Kimish Yigil Lahar Hatzayfim Koru Bigdeim. So Rabbi Akiva also says Ori Yerushalayim b'Churbanon is Ton Kri. It doesn't say that only Rabbi Shua and only Rabbi Gamliel are only the ones who were reaping. Every one of them tore the clothes. The din is Ori Yerushalayim b'Churbanon. So what are you coming right now to say? He wanted to menachem them. So, you know, some people say, the Maral says, he wants to, even the Tzorah person to think tomorrow is going to be a better day. But Ke'ilu, Ad Sheloi, it says, he said a very harsh language. Ad Sheloi Niskayim Nevuoso Shel Uriah. until the nevuah of Rio is kaim, or Yisi Misiori. Rabbi Akiva had moire that maybe this nevuah of tomorrow will be a better day, will never be miskayim. What if tomorrow will be a better day? It's a nevuah, and a nevuah has to be miskayim. What's the pshat in this Gemara? So the truth of the matter, I would like to introduce, there is a shtickle Torah of Reb Chaim Brisker says pshat, sai in Sefer Shmuel and sai in Parshas Vayeschanan that we're going to be reading soon. It says when Shmuel HaNavi sends Shaul HaMelech to kill the Chatoim, the Amalek, he's not doing the job completely. He doesn't kill Agag, he doesn't kill the Tzoyin, he doesn't kill the Boker, he doesn't kill the Noshim, he doesn't kill the Taf. He does a half a job. And then when he comes back, as the Haftarah read in Parshas Zocher, Shtef Vayomer Shaul Shmuel Chatosi Kirvati es Pi Hashem Ve'ato Sona es Chatosi. I'm asking you for Mechil. Vayomer Shmuel Shaul Kora Hashem es Mamloches Yisrael Me'alecho Unesono L'Reach Ha'atoi V'Meko V'gam Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishakev V'Lo Yanachem. Shmuel says to Shaul, you lost it. Kadosh Baruch Hu tore the Malchus from you. You lost the Melucha, that's how Shaul lost the Melucha, became Melech Yisrael. When the son of the Reach V'Atoi V'Meko, the Malchus is going over to David HaMelech, David Melech Yisrael. Was tut sich da? What is the correspondence between Shaul and Shmuel? Shaul is asking, Shaul HaMelech, when I gaze at Tzadik, Lo Yichoto, Mor says he never, Shaul Be'achas, he only made one chet. David was a bigger sinner than Shaul, but the Maise, he tells them, you lost it. And he's asking for Chotosi. He says, Chotosi, Avisi Pashet, he wants to do Juve. So Reb Chaim as follows. If you look up in the Rambam, in Hilchis Yesod HaTorah, the end of Hilchis Yesod HaTorah, the Rambam says, the Rambam he makes klolim as to verify if a Novi is a Novi Emes or a Novi is a Novi Sheker. So I would like to quote the Rambam as follows. The Rambam in Perik Yud Yesod HaTorah Alecha Dal, Shteit Ramazei. Divrei HaPoronois Sha'Novi Oimer Kegon Sheyema Ploini Yomus or Shona Ploini Srov or Milchom V'Kayotze Bohem. Im Lo Yomdu Devora V'Em Bezeh HaKchoshel L'Nevu Osoi Ve'en Oimrim Hine Diba V'Loi Bo. שהקדוש ברוך הוא ערך אפיים ורב חסד וניחם על הרוב ואפשר שעשו תשובו ונסלח להם כאנשי נינווה או שתולו להם כחזקיה. Says the Rambam, if a Novi, somebody comes over, he wants to bonify, verify, authenticate his Nevuah, and he says, it's going to be, next year is going to be a Rov, will be a Milchama, or whatever. Any Dvar Pur Onus. V'lo Yomdu Devor, the year passed by and nothing happened. Ein Bezeh HaKchoshel Nevuah. The Rambam says, doesn't make him into a Novi Sheker. Why? שהקדוש ברוך הוא ערך אפיים ורב חסד וניחם על הרוע, we find in the Haftarah, we're going to read on Yom Kippur, אנשי נינווה, there was a gzeira that נינווה misapeches, and they did tshuva, gdolim v'ad ktanom, the odom, the beheme, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu carried over the gzeira, turned over the gzeira. So in the Nevuah L'Roah, when the Novi comes and makes a Nevuah L'Roah, it's not necessarily by not fulfilling the Nevuah, a raya that the Novi is a Novi Sheker, because there is a midas rachmonus erech apayim v'nichem al haro. Aval, steht in the Rambam, im iftiach al toive, v'omer shiyeh kach v'kach. Novi says, next year is going to be a shefa, we're going to have a wealth, we're going to have a sova, where everybody's going to turn rich. And the year passed by, was hunger, v'loi bo ha'toive, b'yodua shu nevi sheker, shekol dvar toive sheyigzer hakel afilu al tnai eno choyzer bo. Says the Rambam that the Nevuah L'Toiva, if it's not being fulfilled, we know he's a Novi Sheker, because you promise it's going to be good. And if it's not going to be good, it's a raya that you are Novi Sheker, because in Nevuah L'Toiva, says the Rambam, besides one place in Masechet Shabbos, we're not going to go involved in this exclusion that the Rambam brings down from Masechet Shabbos by the Churban, but Nevuah L'Toiva is irrevocable, is you can't be machzir in Nevuah L'Toiva. If Kadosh Baruch Hu promised good, so the Rambam v'hu shu olomadato shebidvar ha'toiva levad yidvochen ha'novi. If you want to test the guy if he's a Novi Sheker, Novi Emes, tell him to say a Nevuah. If he says Nevuah L'Roah and didn't fulfill, so it's nishkin raya. But if he said Nevuah L'Toiva and it didn't happen, so there's a raya that he's a Novi Sheker. Kadosh Baruch Hu never goes back on Nevuah L'Toiva. So the Rambam hu shirmiyahu omar b'tshuvosoi leChananya ben Azur. In the time of Yirmiyahu, in the market in Yerushalayim, in the mall, in the Jerusalem mall, in the Mamila mall in Jerusalem, Yirmiyahu used to be a Shuk HaElyon state in Medrash and the Shuk HaTachtein. Eliyahu used to walk around in Shuk HaTachtein. from east to west, and Hanania ben Azur was a Novi Sheker. He used to walk from west to east in Yishuka Elyon. And Yirmiyahu said there's going to be a Churban, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to send everybody to Golus Yerushalayim, is going to be the Bomus Yar. And Hanania ben Azur said, no, he's Mishugana, Veisin Shvasaret is going to be good. It's Mamish, nothing is happening, continue sinning, you can do whatever you want. The Medrash tells us that Yirmiyahu met Hanania ben Azur. Halfway, he's talking to him from upstairs to downstairs. So the Rambam, Hu Yirmiyahu Omar b'tshuvos leChananya ben Azur shehoyo Yirmiyahu misnabel ro v'Chananya l'toiva Omar leChananya im lo yamdu dvorai, if my nevuah l'ro about the Churban is not going to happen, ein b'zeh raya shani novi sheker. There's no raya on novi sheker. Why? Because could be a misnabel on the Churban because Baruch Hu erech apayim v'rav chesed v'nichem al ro. Aval im lo yamud dvorecha, you should know you are telling him the nevuah next year is going to be a soiva and everybody's going to be rich, everybody healthy, and nothing is happening. B'yadua shata novi sheker. שנאמר שמע את הדבר הזה, הנובי אשר ידבר שולם בבואי דבר הנובי, יבודה הנובי אשר שלוח השם לאמס. So the Rambam says a klal. The Rambam Reb set up in the story of Yirmiyahu and Hanania ben Azur that a nevuah l'toiva is irrevocable, nevuah l'ro is returnable. It's possible to be revocable, but nevuah l'ro through tshuva, through chesed, rav chesed, nichem al ro. Zoch the Prem הזה. When Shaul sins, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a double gzeira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took away the meluch of him. He's not right to be a melech because of Shmuel, Hanovi is metzavem, leich v'araktes achatoim mi'ish v'ad isha mo'il v'ad yoinek, and you not fulfill. For whatever reason, tshuva is not going to help. Why? Because even though, in as much that I am looking at the actual nevuah, it's a nevuah l'ro, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, told the Novi. The second he told the Novi, it's called a nevuah. And he told him that you lost your malchus. So if the nevuah was only about losing the malchus, in essence, it could have been retrievable. It could have been, and when Shaul comes back, he says, "Chotosik yevarti es pi Hashem," tshuva would have helped. Shaul is not worse than Anshe Nimvi. But there's a but. Besides the nevuah l'ro about Shaul, it says unasono l'reach ha'atoy v'meko. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave it over to your better friend. He promised that this melucha that you lost, David is going to get the reach ha'atoy v'meko. So if you want us to go ahead and retrieve this nevuah l'ro, in essence, what we're resulting in klapi you, it's a nevuah l'ro which we're retrieving, and that's possible through tshuva. That's anshe nimvi. But there's a problem because Kadosh Baruch Hu, when he said the psak about Shaul, he says, so it comes out, Kadosh Baruch Hu promised the malchus that's taken away from you to reach ha'atoy v'meko is David HaMelech. So if right now we're going to retrieve this gzeira, this nevuah l'ro that Kadosh Baruch Hu told Shmuel about malchus Shaul, in essence, the collateral impact is going to be that David is not going to get the malchus which he was promised. That's not shaykh, because klapi David is nevuah l'toiva. Says Reb Chaim, ונצח, קורא השם את ממלכת ישראל להלך ונסון לריח ובגרח, וגם נצח ישראל לא ישקע ולא ינוחם. Kadosh Baruch Hu cannot retrieve, because ביחס to David it's nevuah l'toiva, and nevuah l'toiva is non-retrievable. At כאן, Reb Chaim says the same thing about Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah v'yischanan. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells him, Al teisef daber elai oid b'davar hazeh. Moshe says, Shem Ahutro Akzeri, he davened 915 tefillahs. Kadosh Baruch Hu told him, Al teisef, stop, why? V'tzavis Yeshua v'chaskeu v'amtzeu, ki hu yanchileno. B'yachas to you, we said you're going to lost it because of Chet Mei Merivo, you can't come to Eretz Yisrael, which is in the nevuah l'ro, which could be retrievable. But in the second, the Kadosh Baruch Hu said, "V'tzav Yeshua v'chaskeu v'amtzeu," it's in the nevuah l'toiva klapi Yeshua, and by retrieving the gzeira and making Moshe the leader to take Klal Yisrael back to Eretz Yisrael, it's going to be in the nevuah l'toiva klapi Yeshua, which is not miskayim, and that's impossible. Ad kan toichen divrei Reb Chaim, nevuah l'toiva and nevuah l'ro. When the nevuah l'ro comes separate, it's retrievable. When nevuah l'toiva comes separate, it's non-retrievable. When both nevuahs, we says first it's going to happen to bad, and as a result we're going to give good to someone else, the same story by Shaul and David and by Moshe and Yeshua, being that retrieving the nevuah l'ro will result in the cancellation of the fulfillment of the nevuah l'toiva biyachas to the one who got the nevuah l'toiva, i.e. David and or Yeshua, it's non-retrievable. Ad kan divrei Reb Chaim v'advorim yeduim v'atikim, and everybody speaks about it. It's not so posh. It's b'emsa machlekes u'sheinim that every nevuah l'ro that has nevuah l'toiva is a din that can be misbattled. The Ramban al Torah says, "B'mei edoki rashena." I don't want to get involved. He says, for the Ramban, what's b'mei eda? What is ma'ois? Okay, what doesn't show him ois? Bikesh Avrom sheyeda idea amitis shirosheno v'lo yigrom achet o chet zar lemoino shema yasu aknainim tshuvo ve'ikayim bohem rega echod al daber al goy v'amamloch lintoish v'lintoitz la'avit v'shor agoy meraosa v'nichamti al haro v'akodesh Baruch Hu koras imoy bris shirosheno al koponim. When Avrom says b'mei edok yirosheno, he wanted a bris. Why did he want a bris? Says the Rambam, because he says I'm going to take away the knainim and give you Eretz Yisrael. Without a krisis twist, the Ramban says maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu yasu aknainim tshuva exactly like Anshe Nivedi tshuva, and therefore you're not, because Avram Avinu says how do I know b'mei edok yirosheno? HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed a krisis sois bazunder, because without a krisis sois, there's still a possibility that the Haftocha, the Klal Yisrael is going to get Eretz Canaan, is not going to be mekuyum. So here, I once heard from my Rebbe Sheber that says that the Chure, the Tata Gefrek, the Biskarov asked that from this Ramban, because it says that in the Knainim are going to do tshuva, even though Eretz Yisrael was promised to Avram without a bris, he would have been retrievable, and although the Iz and Nevuah L'Teva Klal Yisrael be Eretz Yisrael. Okay, but this is all the shmuas of Nevuah L'Teva and Nevuah L'Ra, which come subsequent to each other. Is a Nevuah L'Teva to one, and Nevuah L'Ra to the second one. So Chaim comes along and says, in as much as the Nevuah L'Ra in itself could be retrievable, but in as much that you have on the side of it, side by side, Nevuah L'Teva, and that cannot be retrievable, that's enough to say that this Nevuah L'Ra is not going to be miskayim. And that's a shayla. The Ran disagrees with the Ramban in Bereshis, and it seems to be a machlekes Hashem. I would like to go a step further and to maybe get a little bit more involved. This is only in the Nevuah L'Teva to Ruvain, and the Nevuah L'Ra to Shimon, Nevuah L'Ra to Shmuel, to Shaul, and Nevuah L'Teva to David. But let me ask you a question. I'd like to go put on our thinking cap and think a little bit deeper. What happened if a Kadosh Baruch Hu comes alone and says that I'm going to do a Nevuah L'Teva to the second person, to David, but that's only subject to a contingency to be met that Kol Zman the Nevuah L'Ra will not be miskayim, the Nevuah L'Teva will never ever be fulfilled. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to bring next year a Soiva, in as much as this year will be a Churban. In as much as this year we're going to suffer 5 months of pandemic, next year I'm going to have wealth and prosperity and Soiva. But without having the kiyum of the Nevuah L'Ra first, the Nevuah L'Teva can never ever be fulfilled. There is a linkage, a direct linkage in the kiyum of the Nevuah L'Teva by having a preliminary precondition has to be met, like all Tnai. It's a Tnai that the Nevuah L'Teva will only be miskayim subsequent and pursuant to the fulfillment of the Nevuah L'Ra. So let's make the math. It's a very simple algorithm. If I'm going to be done in the Nevuah L'Teva itself, it's irretrievable. But being that the Nevuah L'Teva is conditional, it's tonight, that you have to have first the kiyum of the Nevuah L'Ra, so in as much as the Nevuah L'Ra will be retrievable, because in the Shulchan Aruch of the Nevuah L'Ra, it is a retrievable Nevuah, so therefore the Nevuah L'Teva is always pending. Not because Nevuah L'Teva can be retrievable, because in as much that the contingency was never met, you don't have the Tnai Kodim L'Maise that the Nevuah L'Ra could be Chal. So Mimele, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu Tolo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hanovi, Yeshayahu Hanovi comes says, Vo'ido li Eidim Ne'emonim Esuriya ben Shmaya ben Zechariah ben Rachio. Tolo HaKosuv Nevuosoi Shel Zechariah ben Nevuosoi Shel Uriah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, since Yeshayahu is a Novi, he says the Nevuah, that you have 2 Eidim Ne'emonim. One will say, Tzion Soda Techoresh. One is say, V'arabais L'Bomas Yar. And the other one says, Oid Yesh V'Zakenim Zakenis. But the only way the kiyum of Oid Yesh V'Zakenim Zakenis is talking about the Nechama of second base Hamikdash is only after and pursuant to the kiyum of Tzion Soda Techoresh. Now, Tzion Soda Techoresh, Nevuah L'Ra has its own encyclopedia. You look in the encyclopedia Talmudim, the Nevuah L'Ra, it says, Hadar HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Chayzer. So actually, Niskayim and Nevuah Shel Uriah. So I had a pachad, not because I have a suffix that the Nevuah L'Teva maybe not Niskayim, not because the Nevuah L'Teva ever needs a support from an outside third-party element for its authentication. No. But since the Nevuah, the Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Novi was toilet, the Nevuah shel Zechariah, which is Nevuah L'Toive by the key of Nevuah shel Uriah. So Kol Zman, the Nevuah shel Uriah about the Churban was not Niskayim. Hoisim Isyara, you know what? The Kodesh Baruch Hu Keller Chapayim. And Mitzad the Shulchan Aruch of Nevuah L'Roy could be that the Nevuah will never ever be fulfilled. Why? Yasu Tshuva, there won't be a Churban. If there won't be a Churban, there will never be a second Beis HaMikdash. If there won't be a Nevuah L'Ro, which is fulfilled, there will never be. Actually, Niskayim Nevuah Shel Yosim Yisar Shel Niskayim Nevuah Shel Zechariah. Achshav Sheniskayim, now I see this fax coming out of Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim. It is indeed breaking fax news. That Niskayim Nevuah Shel Uriah, I know that right now the Tnai in the Etzem Nevuah of the Nechama, that the Nevuah of Churban was Niskayim, so therefore there is no more retrievable. We have the fulfillment of the precondition. The Yodua Shenevuah Shel Zechariah Niskayim is where you cry, I laugh. Where you see Churban, I see Nechama. B'loshen Zeh Amruloi, they telling him, Akiva Nichamtonu, they telling him that, you know what, this is the biggest Nechama that you can give us. This is something which we did not know before, because there is a Nechama of being fulfilled, which is something which we did not know about till now, and right now we see that it is indeed something which is a major nechama to us. Okay, so this is pshat, and I would like to take it from here further. You know, I'd like to talk about another topic which is discussed in the Gemara. What is this Harat Seifim? We know Harat Seifim is man scope as anybody goes to Yerushalayim. You know, you go to Harat Zeisim from the back, you go through Harat Seifim. Why is it called Harat Seifim? So Rashi says in the beginning of Shmuel, it says that Seifim em Nevim sheroyim nevuoseim lemerochik. They were menabed the nevuah. They state in Pirkei Rabbi Elazar, in Perek Chof Ches. Kol ha-nevim o yoimdim al Harat Seifim. Nevim are called Seifim, and they used to look over there. They're inspired by the view that they saw from Harat Seifim. Seifim is Nevim. They see Merochik. Steht royim nevuoseim lemerochik. And that was the place. The Harat Seifim is the Kal v'Kama Halachos. State in Psochim, the guy said, Mishneh Psochim, somebody went out of Yerushalayim and he was Niska Shoy B'Sar Kodesh. If he comes, Harat Seifim Soifa B'Im Koimoi. It's a landmark. Moy Brocha says about Asiyas Tzrochim Hakolos Aroish Lo Yokol Odom Roisha Keneged Shara Mizrach. State in Gemara in the end of Brochas Lo Yom Welo Meharat Seifim Beroi. The Mokum of Riyas Hamikdash is associated with this Harat Seifim. Moed Cotton says Lagabe Haroy Ore Yehuda Bechurbanon, state that you are Oimer Beis Hamikdash Beis Kocheni B'Tifarteinu Asher Chilelucho Aviseinu Oyel Esreif Aseish V'Kol Machmadeinu L'Charova. So the Gemara Kivan Shegiel Harat Seifim Korea. Harat Seifim is a landmark on the way to Beis Hamikdash, where all several different halachis. And that's why Rabbi Akiva and his friends Kivan Shegiel Harat Seifim Kol B'Gdeim, because that's the Mokum Kriya for Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. Effect of the Maharal, what's also over here? Kivan Shegiel Harabais, Kivan Shegiel Harat Seifim Kol B'Gdeim. But that's halacha. I mean, there were many halachos on the way. Sure, they may say Tfil Saderech, and they may daven, whatever they did. Effect of the Maharal, Ma inyan lahaskir zeh shekol B'Gdeim Harat Seifim. V'alo izedin b'fnei atzmoi shekol haroya Yerushalayim b'churbanon merochik tzorich likor b'godov. Why? So it says that the Lamaisa was, since they're talking about, the Maharal wants to say Balabati, they're talking about the Churban and the Shul, says that you don't think Rabbi Akiva was Mezalzel and the Churban. Rabbi Akiva also ripped his clothes. But I would like to say, to add on a certain dimension, I think it's a gedank and a choshev machshava for this topic we're speaking about tonight. The Gemara, beginning of the Gil, the Gemara is talking about the Oisius, the Aleph base. The Gemara says 22 Oisius in the Aleph base, and there are 5 Oisius, Mem Nun Tzadik Peiches, Man Tzapach, Soifim Amorum. Rashi says Soifim Amorum, Nevi Adayos. In other words, we have 5 Oisius, which are double. Mem, we have and the Mem, Nun, and the Nun, Chof, Lange Chof, and so on and so forth. Man Tzapach. So the Gemara, what does it mean? The Gemara, how could you say that Seifim, the Nevi'im, or Mechadish, this Oisias, steht doch, Eila mitzvah she'ena novi rasher l'chadish dover me'ata, novi cannot be Mechadish any other mitzvah or any other halacha once the Torah is finished, leba shamayimi, and the novi cannot be Mechadish. So the Gemara, shachachum v'chozer v'yizdum. Bam is the, if another Gemara, steht doch, mem v'samach shebeluchas b'neisa yoimdim, the mem seif is in the luchas, the mem is square. So the inside part or the outside part. What's the inside mem, the square inside the luach? How was it standing? He was minakotze lakotze, it was chorus, mitzad latzad. So when you move the luach, the piece of marble, if you want to imagine it, would fall out because it's not connected at all to the outer part. So the more b'neisa yoimdim. So shteitach there was a mem seifis. Shteitach mem v'samach shebelu, talk about mem seifis. So the more shachachum v'chozer v'yizdum. The more said they knew, they didn't know what goes be'emtza teva, what goes be'seif teva. Shachachum v'chozer v'yizdum. They forgot. And the Nevi'ah Adeiris was chozru v'yizdum. Tisha says, Tisha brings down Rabbi in the time, Besefer Hayosho, man sapach kemoi kol tzoifayich. Nevi'im, tzoifim ma'ar Ephraim. Nosayim Nevi'im, tzoifim she'omdu l'Yisrael, v'yetzoifim alolu la'achar she'sorof omnas atera, u'mishum loif nofach loshan, loish v'loshan, nikra man sapach. Min tzapach, min tzoifayich. Alphabetical should have been chof, mem, nun, pei tzadik. But the reason why it's called man tzapach, 6 cases, min tzafayich. Tzafayich is the tzofim are nevi'im, and they are min the oisias u'mitzchadesh via the nevi'im. As I state in the Gemara in Megillah of Beis Amud Beis of Gimel Mudal of the whole sugya segment. But the fascinating Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi in the beginning of Megillah, anybody wants to look, a beautiful Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says as follows: Omer Rav Sima b'shem Rabbi Shua man tzafach tzofim amorum alocha l'moishe misina. It's really halacha l'moishe misina. It's tzofim amorum. As we learned before, the halacha was forgotten, and the Nevi'im reignited it, shachachum v'chozer v'yizdum, resulting in there's no problem with another rasher l'chadish dover me'at. Rabbi Yirmiyah b'shem Rab Chiya bar Abba Omar, Mashi skinu hatzofim was not the Nevi'im. Maise hoyo b'yoyim sagrir. It was a cloudy day, a wintry day. V'lo nichnesu chachomim lebeis avad, and the Rebbes did not come into Cheder. Voyu sham tinekes. There were a few tinekes b'srabim. Ve'omru bo nasa beis avad. Omru maitam ksiv mem mem nun nun tzadi tzadi pei pei chof chof. Why does it say the double oisius? This tinekes b'srabim. They were mechadeshet. El mem mem mi maimer mem is maimer mi maimer le maimer mi neman le neman mi tzadik le tzadik mi pe le pe mi kaf le kaf mi maimer le maimer. ממיימר של הקדוש ברוך הוא למיישה של מוישה. מנאמן לנאמן מהקדוש ברוך הוא שנקרא כל מלך נאמן, למוישה שנקרא נאמן, דקסיב בכל בייס נאמנו. מצדיק לצדיק מהקדוש ברוך הוא שנקרא צדיק, דקסיב צדיק השם בכל דרוך, למוישה שנקרא צדיק, דקסיב צדקס השם עושה. מפה לפה, מפיו של הקדוש ברוך הוא לפיו של מוישה, מכף לכף, מכף יודו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, לכף יודו של מוישה. This OCS is a remez that everything was given over different version. Ne'emones, pe, chaf. That's what it does. So the Gemara, so the Yerushalmi, v'simu oisom, v'omdu chachomim g'dolim b'Yisrael. Manihu, Rabbi Lezer, v'Rabbi Shua, v'Rabbi Akiva hoyu. V'koru aleim gam b'ma'alolov isnaker nar. Okay. So the Gemara doesn't think that. Apparently, the Sugya Megillah says, Mem v'samach, there was in Sinai. They were mechadeshet. The question is, when it was forgotten, how was it rejuvenated? Was it done through Nevi'ah Adeiris? Or was it done through Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Lezer, and Rabbi Shua, which were tinoikes, and they darshan and mimayim l'mayim, minema l'nema, mipel l'peh, michaf l'chaf. Very interesting. More in the beginning of Sanhedrin, the more in the Ches, the more it says, Moshe says, because Moshe Rabbeinu said, "V'adavar sheyikshem mechem tikrivun elai u'shmaitziv al dover zeh ne'nash Moshe Rabbeinu diksiv v'yakar Moshe b'bnoi slofchod es mishpotam lifnei Hashem." But what's the word from the Goyen is printed in different versions of the Goyen, but it is indeed the word of the Goyen. The Goyen says, the Gemara says, man tzapach. That man tzapach tzayfim amora means to say it's not considered l'chadish dover me'ato, but chos shochachum v'chos v'yizdum. So the Goyen, the oisius man tzapach is a Rashi Tevis. Mem is connected the all 5 halachas which was nisalma mimoishe throughout Moshe's history. The 5 halachas. Mem is connected mekoishesh, kiloi poira shma yoseloi, and Moshe goes to ask the Shaila. Nun is connected noikev the Mekalo, noikev Hashem. Sad is connected slofchot, vayakar Moshe's mishpotom. Pei is connected Pesach Sheni, that Moshe didn't know what to do. Imdu ve'eshma ma'yetzav Hashem. And Chof is Keneged Cosby Basur, it says, Vehema Boichim Ne'elma Mem Aloch. Shochachum means to say Moshe was forgotten. Chazru v'yizdum, they were chazed the Parshas Nizgala after he asked the Kodesh Baruch. What's the pshat? So be'emes what's the pshat? Mimayim l'mayim mitzadik l'tzadik mipel l'peshteit in the Mogen Avram and the Yalkut and the Zayisran and Matneskune. Be'emes kol ha'teire kula b'dikdukeyo u'proteiseyo sai teire shebiksav teire shebal peh was given completely b'shleimus to Moshe Rabbeinu Sinai. Okay, but what's ne'elmu mimenu? Tolo be'atzmo. Moshe, to a certain extent, made a certain mistake. The Gemara says, "Biglal she'omar." It's a einish. He was tolo be'atzmo, so they were forgotten from him. And then when Moshe vayamen, Moshe's Bayakov, Moshe's mishpat lifnei Hashem was given to him this halacha. And then, by the way, the Maral says, why dafka these parshas were ne'elmu from Moshe? He says Moshe had a negias in each parsha. By Kozi Basur, they told him by Bas Yisrael Miyiteloch, Pesach Sheni, steht in Gemara, Michoel and Tzofel, where he's craving with they were Tommy Mace when they were basic in Nod of Aviyu, and they tied it to him. You also need our initial Yosef. What are you giving us this parsha? But no Slavchod, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu had tiny because he was Diba b'Moshe. Slavchod was Medaber b'Moshe. Neikev Hashem is because he's Moshe killed the Mitzri and his Galgal Yosef and Beizina Shel Moshe. All these things Moshe had in the keys. What the pshat that these oisias were forgotten? Zokt the Marsha, the Gemara in Tamur that we brought a few times already. That Bishal of Moshe Rabbeinu was Nistalgal Beis Elome. Yes, Yeshua. Do you need anything to know? He says, "You said about me, Mishal Yeshua Binu Nar." Gemara in Tamur Daf Tezayin. LeYomish B'Toich Ha'el. I should forget. He's Chol Shadaita Shel Moshe. Biglal Zois Nishtakol from Yeshua 300 halachas, 1700 halachas, 3,000 halachas. All these halachas were halachas which every time it says in the Gemara, the Kama Mekoyim, it says in Shas, Shochachum v'chozu v'yizdum, Nisuchamayim, Arover, Chatzitzin, Mechitzin. All these halachas in Shochachum v'chozu v'yizdum, it's all the halachas which are forgotten b'mei Evlei Shel Moshe. So Zog the Marsha, Moyer the Kazach, when this Chazru atzayfim v'yizdum, what do they say? In other words, the message is that the Torah is given over to Moshe b'shlei Musa. So the Misas Moshe was the Messiah that Moshe was Miskabel. Moshe kibul Torah misinai u'masru Yeshua. And since Yeshua was plaguing in that, Yeshua said, "Klum, I could forget anything." So Yimamish was Pegeya in Yena Oisies from Maimer LeMaimer, Neman LeNeman, Tzadik LeTzadik, Messiah Satayra, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua was Nanash in the very same chetis the Rebbe had, he had. And therefore, those halachos were forgotten. Who is this Tinoike Shebes Rabban, the Dorish Me'atzmom, this man Tzapach? That they're basically saying in the message, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shuv, Rabbi Kibbutz, Ma'alol, Vitzakana. These are the tzayfim that are Chozru v'Yizdum, this Oisies Asayfies. This Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shua, these Talmidim of Tinoike Shebes Rabban in a later stage, when they're coming in, the Ma'alol Visnaker Nar, there was, what are they coming to say? Vos Zokt Rabbi Kiva. This nevuah of the Churban is niskayim, so everything is going to be niskayim. There's nothing is going to be forgotten. Everything is going to be continued. So it's not stam and landmark where you remember of the Churban. But this tzayfim, this man sapach, this tzayfim amorim, the tzayfim are not more than these very same babies. When they graduated, when they're holding already those halzach shem by the Churban, by the end of the life of Rabbi Kiva, and they said, Minema lenema mitzadik as Rabbi Kiva, you should know one thing. Everything, all the nevuos, all the kairas hayomim, all the history is going to be fulfilled. So the nevuah, the Churban is there, but not only the Churban, but the Nechama. V'oidali eidim ne'emoni mesuriya koyin Zechariah. Even the first nevuah is niskayim. Here we are, the tzayfim, the one that we saw, that is going over from generation to generation, from Novi to Novi. The history is reliving itself. It's coming in to the Nevuas HaNechama. This is the basic and the aside of what we learn. Akiva Nichamtonu, Akiva